I need to tell you something I've never said out loud. I watched a man get humiliated in front of a crowd, and I laughed. I didn't know then what I know now, and I'm not sure which one hurts more. It was a Thursday in late October, 2024. Chicago had already decided fall was over. The wind off Lake Michigan came in that morning like a reminder, cold, cutting, completely indifferent to whatever plans you'd made. The sky over the South Loop was the color of wet concrete, flat heavy. I was standing in line at a food cart on the corner of South Wabash and East Balbo at 8:40 in the morning. Rainwater drying on my coat from the walkover, third coffee of the day in my hand. Already running 7 minutes late for a 9 o'clock, the cart was called Okafor's Red and Silver. It had been on that corner for 3 years and I'd been a regular for most of them, not because I had to be, but because the jerk chicken was the kind of thing you thought about on a bad day and it made the day slightly less bad. The man running it was named James, that was all I knew. He was 52, tall, with the kind of stillness that used to make me uncomfortable before I understood what it actually was. He didn't talk much, he'd hand you your food. Look you in the eye, and that was enough. I'd never thought to ask him anything beyond my order, I didn't know then, what I was standing next to every single morning. That's the part I can't get past. Richard Harmon arrived at 8:47, black Mercedes G-Wagon, 2023. AMG package. He pulled it straight up onto the curb, right in front of the cart, and left the engine running while he finished a call. I recognized him, most people in that neighborhood did. His name was on the building directly across the street, 31st floor. Harmon Capital Group, the kind of man whose assistant had an assistant. He got out of the car, looked at the cart, looked at James. "You're blocking the entrance approach," he said, like he was reading from a document. "Move the cart." James looked at him. Set down his tongs. Didn't say a word. I remember thinking, just move, just say something. Just give this man something so he walks away, because I'd seen that look on Harmon's face before, on other men like him, and I knew what came next. But James didn't move, didn't speak. Just looked at Harmon the way you look at rain. I said move. This isn't your corner. I've had vendors cleared off this block before. Harmon took out his phone. "I'll have someone here in 10 minutes. Someone behind me muttered something. Someone else pulled out their phone. I stood there holding my coffee and I didn't say a word either. That's the part I'll carry, and then. I don't fully know how to explain what happened next, even now. A small hand appeared at Richard Harmon's sleeve. I didn't see the boy walk up, nobody did. He was 9 years old. Bear's hoodie, gray. Backpack slightly too big for him, straps adjusted all the way in. He had his father's eyes, that same unhurried, unafraid quality that I had spent 3 years misreading as detachment. He tugged Harmon's sleeve, once. "Don't move," he said. His voice was completely calm, "Follow me." The line broke into nervous laughter. I laughed. I'm telling you that honestly because I want you to understand how wrong we all were in that moment. Harmon almost laughed too. He looked around at us, performing the joke. You know how men like that do, and then he looked back at the boy, and the boy wasn't laughing. He wasn't scared, wasn't performing. Wasn't waiting for anyone's reaction. He was just standing there, holding Harmon's gaze with the absolute patience of someone who already knew how the next 5 minutes were going to go. Harmon looked at James. James was watching his son. Whatever passed between them in that look, I couldn't read it then. I think I understand it now. Harmon crossed the street and followed a 9-year-old into the lobby of his own building, and I still had no idea what was about to happen to him inside. I found out the rest of it later, piece by piece. The lobby of 330 South Wabash has a wall. Most people walk past it every day without looking. I'd walked past it myself, donor plaques, old photographs. The kind of institutional history that blends into the background once you've seen it twice. Eli walked straight to a photograph near the center of the wall. It was from the Chicago Legacy Foundation Gala, November 2021. Hilton on Michigan Avenue. The image showed a man in a tuxedo, mid-handshake, smiling at the camera. The man shaking hands with Richard Harmon was James. The plaque beside it read, "In recognition of the Okafor Family Trust, whose 1962 land donation made this development possible. 3 generations of service to this city, Sergeant First Class James A. Okafor, U.S. Army, retired. Medal of the City of Chicago, 2019, Chicago Legacy Foundation, Honoree, 2021. Harmon stood in front of that wall, and this is the part that nobody who was outside on that sidewalk got to see. This is the part that I think about at night, the security guard told someone. That someone told someone else. The story moved the way those stories do, quietly, incompletely, until I got enough of it to put together what Harmon's face must have looked like in that moment. He'd called the man furniture. He'd threatened to have him removed from the corner, and that corner. That sidewalk, that building, the ground it all sat on, existed because of James Okafor's family. He hadn't recognized him. 3 years ago he'd shaken that man's hand in a ballroom in front of 300 people, thanked him publicly. Smiled for the photograph, and on a gray October morning, with a different set of clothes and a food cart between them, he'd looked straight at him and seen nothing worth recognizing. Eli looked up at Harmon. "That's my dad," he said. Turned around, walked back outside, and Harmon stood alone in that lobby. In the building that man's family built, and had absolutely nowhere to put what he was feeling. That is the revenge right there, no confrontation, no raised voice. No moment of public collapse, just a mirror, held up by a 9-year-old in a lobby, on a Thursday morning. If that story hit you somewhere real, share it. Right now, someone in your life needs to hear this today and subscribe. Because this channel exists for exactly this. When Harmon came back outside, James was already serving the next person. Harmon walked up to the cart, the line parted slightly. People do that, without knowing why, when the air around two people changes. James looked at him, Harmon said, quietly, barely above the sound of the wind. "I didn't know." James held that for a moment. "Most people don't," he said. That was all. He turned back to the cart, the line kept moving. I was still standing there, I'd missed my 9 o'clock. I didn't care, I kept thinking about the boy, about how he'd walked into that building like he'd done it 100 times. How he'd gone straight to that photograph without looking for it. How he'd said, "That's my dad," with no anger in it. No satisfaction, no performance at all. Just truth, delivered flat. And then he left. That's what stays with me. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't public. Richard Harmon didn't fall apart on a sidewalk in front of a crowd. He walked back out of that lobby, got in his $180,000 car, and drove up to his 31st floor office. But he took that lobby with him, he took that photograph with him. And every single morning after that, every time he looked out his floor-to-ceiling window at the corner of South Wabash and East Balbo, he saw James Okafor standing at that cart. Still silent, still unhurried. Still there. 3 weeks later, on November 7, 2024, Harmon's office quietly submitted paperwork to the city's licensing board, requesting a permanent vendor designation for James Okafor at that corner. He never told James. He never told anyone. The city letter arrived in early December. James read it once, set it on the counter. Went back to his prep work. I only know because I asked him, one morning, a few weeks after all of it. How he'd stayed so quiet through the whole thing. He looked at me for a moment, like he was deciding something. Then he said, "Because I already knew." I didn't ask him anything else. Some things don't need the last word. Some men win so quietly that the other person doesn't even realize they've lost, until they're alone in a room full of evidence, and there's no one left to perform for. That's James Okafor. That was always James Okafor. We just weren't paying attention. Share this. Someone you love has been underestimated. They need to hear this today. Subscribe, because quiet power deserves a loud audience.